All right, welcome back to RBT Exam Review and the continuation of our RBT Practice Exam Series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shoutout. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. A client has learned that when their teacher says line up, they should stand in line at the door, and when they do, they receive praise. The phrase line up now reliably evokes the line up behavior. In behavioral terms, what is the phrase line up functioning as? So we are looking specifically at the phrase line up, as the question is indicating. They want to know what is line up in behavioral speak. So what is the technical term for line up? Well, in this case, the client knows that when the teacher says line up, they should stand in line at the door, and when they do, they receive praise. So since line up is now evoking standing in line at the door because of the praise, we can reliably say that praise was acting as a reinforcer. And so when we have a instruction or an antecedent followed by a behavior followed by a consequence, and the consequence reliably evokes the behavior in the future, what does that antecedent become? Well, it becomes an SD. The lineup is now functioning as a discriminative stimulus. It's signaling to the client that if they go stand in line at the door, they will receive praise. Because in the past, when lineup was said and they stood in line at the door, they received the praise. So, what is the phrase lineup functioning as? A reinforcer that increases lineup behavior. Phrase is our consequence, so that is going to be our reinforcer. Lineup is not a consequence, therefore it cannot be a reinforcer. B, a discriminative stimulus. Yes, we just discussed why it's a discriminative stimulus. It's signaling to the client, if they engage in the behavior, they will receive reinforcement. C, a punisher that decreases other behaviors. Once again, lineup is an antecedent, right? Since it's an antecedent, it can't be a reinforcer or punisher, and even if it were, it isn't decreasing any behavior. D, an establishing operation that increases motivation. What do establishing operations do? Well, they're a type of motivating operation where we are altering the value of consequences. Lineup isn't altering the value of a consequence. It's signaling the consequence is available. Therefore, lineup is functioning as B, a discriminative stimulus. During a session, your client becomes physically aggressive towards you, attempting to hit and kick. You have implemented the de-escalation strategies outlined in the crisis plan, but the behavior is escalating. The client is blocking your path to the door. What should be your first priority? So in a crisis situation, a crisis or emergency situation, the first thing we're always doing is following the plan, right? We want to make sure we're following the crisis plan. And in this case, we've already done that, okay? So we have a client who's becoming physically aggressive, and you've tried the de-escalation strategies, but it's not working. So when things aren't working, what becomes the utmost priority out of everything, right? Well, it's going to be to keep everyone safe, okay? When we get a situation that is a crisis or an emergency where someone's become aggressive, we want to keep everybody out of harm's way, and that includes yourself. So if you've already tried this crisis plan, the behavior is escalating, the client's blocking your path to the door, what do you need to do? A, restrain the client using approved physical management techniques. Now, we want to be very careful with restraint. It's a last resort measure, and you only do it as instructed. So it's definitely not going to be the first thing we try. B, ensure your own safety by creating distance and moving to a safe location, calling for help if needed. Yes, now it might seem a little self-serving, but it's true. You need to make sure you're safe, right? End of the day, we're trying to keep you and the client and everyone else safe. C, continue implementing the behavior intervention plan as written. Well, you're trying, right? But the behavior is escalating. So before we continue this plan that may escalate the behavior, you have to make sure you're safe. Because if you're not safe, then you're not going to be able to do the plan anyway. D, attempt to calm the client by offering their most preferred reinforcer. Well, you certainly don't want to try and reinforce this behavior, right? And that's potentially what you're doing by giving that reinforcement. So in this case, before you continue or do anything else, you've got to ensure your own safety, call for help, if needed. And then once you're safe, then we can continue implementing the plan as directed. You're teaching a client to wave goodbye. You demonstrate waving and say, do this, and the client imitates your wave. You immediately provide enthusiastic praise and a small edible. Over multiple trials, the client's wave becomes more accurate and occurs more quickly after your model. What teaching procedure are you using? All right, easy question, but I wanted to use it as a teaching question, okay? It's asking about the teaching procedure, and we know we're teaching the client to wave goodbye. You demonstrate waving and say, do this, and the client imitates your wave. Now, for true imitation, okay, we wouldn't say, do this or copy me. True imitation is when the learner just copies what they see. That's true imitation. And so by saying do this, we're teaching them this idea of imitation. We're also reinforcing with praise and edibles. And then over multiple trials, the wave is more accurate and occurs more quickly. So we're teaching this imitation. And this is how we imitation train, right? Eventually, what you want them to do is when you wave, they wave back. Think about it in a natural environment where if someone in the natural world waves at you, they don't have to say, wave at me or copy me. You just wave back. That's imitation. So what teaching procedure are you using? Shaping through differential reinforcement. Do we have any indication of any sort of approximations? No, they're not mentioned, and shaping is not implied here. B, naturalistic teaching. Well, since you are using multiple planned trials, this is much closer to a discrete trial training rather than naturalistic, where we're just using the natural environment and natural situations to teach. C, imitation training. Yes, for all the reasons we just described, we're teaching this client to imitate waving. Eventually, we'll remove the SD of do this, or the prompt of do this, and then just demonstrate waving and have the client imitate on their own. And then D, discrimination training. We're not teaching them to choose or identify between two or more stimuli. We're just trying to get them to copy us. Imitation is an extremely important pre-learning skill for our clients to have. So imitation training is very important. And we want pure imitation where nobody is telling them to copy or do this. They are just imitating on their own. When you first started working with a new client, the sound of a clicker meant nothing to the client. Over several weeks, you consistently paired the clicker sound with delivery of preferred items and activities. Now, when the client hears a clicker, they smile and appear excited even before receiving the tangible reinforcer. What has occurred with the clicker sound? All right, so the question wants to know about this clicker sound. And what we know so far is we have this new client and the sound of a clicker meant nothing. So if the sound of a clicker meant nothing, that had no effect on the behavior, we would consider that a neutral stimulus. Over several weeks, you pair the clicker with preferred items and activities. So we have these conditioned items or these preferred items, and we're pairing the clicker. And through pairing, what are we doing? We're conditioning. Now, when the client hears the clicker, they smile and appear excited even before receiving the tangible reinforcer. So what appears to have happened? What appears that clicker has been conditioned to have the properties of the tangible reinforcers, such as the items and activities. So what has occurred? A, the clicker has become an unconditioned reinforcer through repeated use. Well, we don't create unconditioned reinforcers, right? That's why they're unconditioned. They don't require pairing. In this case, the clicker did require pairing. It's not unconditioned. B, the clicker has become a conditioned reinforcer through pairing with established reinforcers. Exactly. We've paired it, we've conditioned it, and now it's having the effect of the items we paired it with. C, the clicker has lost its effectiveness through overuse. That does not appear to be the case. It seems like the clicker is actually getting more effective. D, the clicker functions as a discriminative stimulus only. Well, that's not the case either, right? It's not an SD. It's now functioning as a reinforcer. Eventually, it seems like the clicker would be enough, maybe, to be reinforcer without even the tangibles becoming involved. Why? Because we've paired it, we've conditioned it, and it now is acting as a conditioned or secondary reinforcer. Your BCBA asks you to implement a behavior intervention plan exactly as written for a 2-week baseline period before making any modifications. During the second week, you notice that one component of the plan doesn't seem to be working, and you believe you know how to improve it. What should you do? All right, so you are working with this team or this BCBA, and you want to, and as usual, right, you're implementing the behavior plan as written. That's great. Now, during the second week, you see that one component of the plan doesn't seem to be working, and you know how to improve it. You, as an RBT, are an important part of the team, and your opinion matters. So if you ever have an opinion or insight, you need to share that. Now, you are told this is baseline. We're going to wait 2 weeks. So even though you think you can improve it, how should you approach that situation? A, make the modification immediately since you're in the best position to judge what works with the client. That may be true because you might be the one working most close with the client, but at the end of the day, it's not your role to make that change without guidance. B, stop implementing that component of the plan until you can discuss it with your BCBA. Again, you can't go and just make the change without further guidance from your BCBA. C, make small modifications, but don't tell your BCBA to avoid seeming incompetent. It's the worst thing you can do. You need to have honest and open communication lines with your BCBA and constantly discussing things with them. D, continue implementing the plan as written and document your observations to share with your BCBA. Yes, keep doing the plan, and then when you see your BCBA, give them your idea. They may agree, they may not, but that communication is what matters. Thanks for watching. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Please like and subscribe. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout-out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.